Paloma, welcome to Star Power.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So I'm really impressed. We just talked before the call here, before the show, and you were talking about how you're kind of up from the Los Gatos area, and you just kind of threw down the gauntlet and said, "No, I got to go down to L.A." Tell us a bit about that very quickly, about your decision to just uproot and move to where you thought the action was, and how that's all worked out for you.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah. So I started singing in college. I was going to UC Santa Cruz at the time. Graduated, moved to San Jose, Los Gatos area, and I was trying really hard to try and make some waves there. I think I did pretty well, but at some point you kind of plateau, especially because there's not as much industry there as there is down in LA. There's definitely a scene, but it's not like it is down here. And people used to tell me, you don't need to move to LA. You can do everything you can do down there up here. I tried that theory, and at some point I was like, I don't believe you. I'm doing this. I'm just going to go. I'm going to check it out myself. And
Love that.
honestly, probably best thing I ever did. It truly is flourishing down here. I mean, everybody I know is like an entertainer. They're a musician. They're a singer. They're a model, dancer. It's so cool to be around all these like-minded people versus when you're up in the Bay Area, you've got a lot of different kinds of people, mostly tech. So, when you find yourself at a party with all tech industry people, you're like, what am I doing here? So I moved. It was a good move.
That's really cool, I have to say, because it shows that you believe in yourself and that you trust your instincts, and to a certain degree, I'm sure those folks are right that you can do lots of things wherever you are these days, but you kind of got to go where the action is, especially in entertainment, because it's a very specific
Especially.
kind of dynamic, right? It's a very specific kind of energy, and when you're around other people who believe what you believe, that can kind of fill you up and get you excited, right? So it kind of pushes you forward even more, right?
Yeah, you nailed it. You want to be around the people that have the same kind of energy as you. It's inspiring when you see other people working hard towards the same kind of dreams you have. It pumps you up more. It makes you work harder. In fact, you learn from them. You see what they're doing. What are you not doing? I wasn't exposed to those types of people where I was from.
That's interesting. That's a really good point too, and you're kind of speaking to really good advice for anyone out there who wants to get into the music business, right? Which is to understand that it's really good to learn from the lessons of others. A lot of people
Mhm.
like to brag about learning the hard way, but like you can learn well the hard way, but you can also learn the easy way. And it sounds to me like you've learned just by thinking about stuff and by realizing that other people have experiences that can help you, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of this I feel is trial and error too, because there's not one person. Would I have loved someone like Mariah Carey to have sat me down and said, "Here's what you got to do"? No one outlines the steps for you. You have to look at what other people are doing. You have to make some waves. You're always trying things out and failing so much. I see why people give up. This is not easy. It's just really hard. So,
Yeah, perseverance, right? That's the key. I remember I asked my drama teacher in college about a future in acting and talent and so forth, and he said, really, the only thing that matters is endurance and perseverance. And you just kind of spoke to that, and that's kind of impressive too, because you seem to be kind of young. So for you to have that awareness, that's a pretty good sign. How did you get that awareness?
Uh, gosh, well, I mean, I started really young too. I mean, I've wanted to be a singer since I was, 14 or 15. So it's like I've so comfortable with the amount of perseverance that I have within me that it's kind of become part of my everyday life. So I don't know if I answered your question. Sorry.
That's great. No, that's a good answer. That's a perfect answer. Well, speaking of perseverance, songwriting is such an important part of music, and a lot of people will sing songs written by other folks. Some people really want to write their own, or it's a combination. But it's a real art form, and it's a very difficult thing to do, and it's something that you do. Can you talk a bit about songwriting and how you get that done? Is it just inspirational? Do you have a method? Tell us about that.
Sure, sure. I can talk about that. Well, I started writing songs pretty young, and at that time I was just writing by myself with a piano. Now I write with at least two to three people in a room. And I've got to say that the more the merrier. Not, okay, you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen, but definitely two heads are better than one. Sometimes three people in a room makes a lot of sense because what happens is you kind of get stuck doing a lot of the same melodies over and over. You have a style, you have a flow, right? That is unique to you. Now if you get a couple other writers in the room, they have their flow and you can mix and match your flow and all of a sudden you have a kick-ass song that you might not have had otherwise if you were going to write by yourself in a little dark room. So I definitely believe in collaborating when it comes to songwriting. As far as the inspiration goes, it's usually dependent upon the artist. So let's say we've got three people in a room and we're writing a Paloma Rush record. Now those same three people can get in a room and we're writing for one of the other writers, totally different dynamic because as the artist, they're like, okay, what do you want to talk about? What message do you want to send? And they try to get your vibe on it and then go from there. And usually as the artist, I'm usually the one that picks the music that we want with it. Like we get with a producer, we listen to some beats. Oh, I'm feeling this one. I feel like I could write to this one. And then you go from there. So it's geared kind of towards you. And if you get the right team, it's like magic. It's great.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. And I've spent a lot of years making music and listening to music, obviously. And you made a really excellent observation there that people will have their own style, and so this typically comes into play later on during a musician's career when someone's listening to a song that came out and you're like, oh, that's kind of like that other song that they did, and you kind of nailed that, frankly. And you talk about how you work around that, and it's through collaboration. You kind of riff off of other people, obviously positive people, folks with whom you get along and can collaborate. But it's important to have those other people in the room with you as you work through the song and nail it down, right?
Yes, it's so helpful. So helpful to have other perspectives on your melodies and on your lyrics.
Yeah, that's good stuff. What about performing live? Because to me, performing live is so powerful. It's so much fun. It really is what the business is all about when you get right down to it. But it's also a challenge, right? You have to go on the road a lot of times, or if you're in your hometown, it's the same old folks every time. And so there are lots of different hurdles with respect to performing live. How do you view that? How do you get through it? How do you enjoy it?
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely touch on those. Well, yes, performing live is so fun because you're connecting with your audience, and especially if there's a song that people know and that can kind of sing along with it, it's always just really cool just to know you're getting feedback, you're getting that sort of validation that yep, putting out good stuff. At the same time, is it hard? Yeah, it's hard, especially in LA. Playing live shows is basically a money pit, okay? It is pay to play everywhere. Every promoter goes, oh, yeah, I've got shows for you. I've got shows for you. You have to pay for like 20 tickets in advance. And then you've got to turn around and hustle those tickets to your friends. Now, I'm talking from an indie artist here. I'm not selling out stadiums. Drake's never had to sell a ticket in his life. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe he did back in the day. But when you're an indie artist, guess who those people are? They're your friends, they're your acquaintances, they're people that have come to your shows before, and it's like, so you're selling the tickets, right? Where do you think that money goes that you just, okay, that's going to the musicians that you have to play that show. And then you're getting a percentage of the door, but not that much of a cut. I'm telling you, I don't think I've ever made a profit on a show since I moved to LA. It's all just coming out of my pocket. And I think a lot of indie artists expect to be like discovered at shows. I don't know when the last time there was an A&R person just cruising around shows to try and sign somebody. I don't think that happens anymore. They're looking at online numbers. So if you like doing shows because you connect with your fans and that's your jam and you're willing to spend your own money, then okay. But if you're trying to look at this like a business and get discovered, it's totally not the way to go. You're just become annoying to your friends every time you play. Because if I've seen your show 3 times, it's like I don't totally want to go a 4th time. You kind of just have to because you're supporting your friend or whatever. But I played 20 shows in 2017. I'm like, I'm going to take a break on that and try a different approach. Like, let's get the song somewhere. Let's get some fans first, like some real fans first that already want to come to your show. You didn't have to try, right? That's what I'm about these days. So anyway, excuse my rant. I've just not.
No, that's good. This is great, honestly, because you brought up several really interesting points. And at the risk of dating myself, I've been in the music business now on and off pretty deeply for 25 years or so. And I can go
Mhm.
back further if I talk about just myself as a musician, but the business itself of promoting music, of putting on music, and this is something we talk about on Star Power is the folks behind the scene who make it happen. But you bring up a really, really good point, and it's something I've seen develop over these past 20 plus years. The nature of actually putting on a gig and how people get paid and all that stuff. And I actually have a business model in mind here that we can talk about if we have time. But the fact that you, as an indie promoter, have to go and actually purchase tickets to get time at a stage somewhere to hopefully get noticed, etc., that really speaks to what's actually happening in the industry. And I think you're right that a lot of attention is going online, but I got to tell you, I think that A&R folks and labels in general are kind of missing out here. And I talked to a guy just this morning on another show that we do who was telling me about a business model that is promoted by, apparently invested into by Pitbull and Steve Wozniak and some other folks. Fan Label, I think it's called. It's a whole game on called Fan Label. And the idea is that eventually indie artists will be able to promote themselves and do that very effectively through online measures and other matters and essentially circumvent that route, which is, talk about a balance of power shift for since the dawn of music that we know that you and I experienced in the 50s and the 60s, 70s, et cetera, all through till today, music labels have been the kingmakers. But that is going to change. And so I guess what I'm saying is you're kind of at the cutting edge there by thinking this way and realizing that you have to go outside the box to get stuff done. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. You, yeah, you've got to have a great online presence, and but here's the thing, it's kind of like a, what do you call it, a double-edged sword? Like
Yeah.
if you don't play live, you won't get good live, and then by the time people want to see you, you suck.
Yeah, that's
So
not
it's
good.
like you definitely want to keep up your chops, but I don't think you need to be playing one show every couple weeks. Like I know artists who are playing like a couple times a month, and I don't know how they don't burn out. I think you want to keep it kind of consistent, but do what makes sense for you and your art and your pocketbook.
Yeah, that I have to say that's pretty wise, and I think you're onto something here. And there is a difference, right? Like there is live music and there's produced music, and I like both. Obviously, most music people do, but they are different entities. They're different in terms of how you create them. They're different in how you promote them. They're different in how people experience them. And I'm guessing that you love both in their ways, right? It's fun to produce. It's fun to be in the studio to create something that's really good, and you can nail it down just like you like, and then it's also good to get out on the road and get in front of people and get that energy, right?
Mhm. Yeah, definitely enjoy both, but I mean, as again, as an indie artist, most of us have some kind of a limited budget, and if you're going to invest in something, maybe consider pulling back on the shows and investing a little bit more into PR and Spotify playlists and somebody who can get you an online presence instead. I think it's just so much more effective nowadays.
That's interesting. That makes sense. Well, let's talk about how you get by. And I'm looking at your site again. It's Hustle Like a Gemini on Twitter. It's at Paloma underscore Rush. That's PALOMA underscore Rush. Hustle Like a Gemini. Side hustles. That's a big thing for indie artists, right? Tell me what you do to side hustle to just kind of get by.
Right, right. So everybody's got that side hustle, and I think it's just funny how quickly that side hustle turns into your main hustle when you realize how expensive it is to be starting out in this business. But look, if I were like, let's say somebody were in my position, getting ready to move to LA, and even if they had a few years to think about it, I would say make your side hustle good, because little did I know that like getting a college education would totally help me in the long run, because whereas I have friends that are driving for Uber and waiting tables, I'm making a salary and I can afford a 2-bedroom apartment by myself. It's like, yeah, you got to work, but you're going to be, if you don't know how to work hard, you shouldn't be trying this business in the first place. So if you can get your side hustle, like if you can do a really good job, get a skill or go to school, or like Imagine, it was your like backup plan. It's so important to be able to make money, to be able to spend it on yourself, because unless you have an investor, no one's going to spend it on you. So set yourself up in a position where that side hustle is a good hustle. That's all I'm saying.
I like that. I'll actually give you an interesting piece of perspective here, and I'll ask you one last question. But one of my best friends in the world is a guy I did some business with a number of years ago. Is a Russian guy, Nikolai Menchugov. He's one of the nicest guys in the world, just absolutely brilliant man. And he once shared with me a Russian proverb, which is that there is nothing more permanent than a temporary solution. Right? And it kind of
that
speaks
is awesome.
to isn't that wild? So it's something to consider, and I think you're onto something here. That you do have to be pragmatic about life and realistic, but also learn to invest in yourself, right? And I guess that'll lead me to the final question, which is, what really got you into this in
Eric,
the first place?
Before we move on from that, let me just say one other thing too.
Go ahead.
As the last thing, I started teaching vocal coaching about 6 years ago at a music school, and I didn't realize it was going to turn into something big. But guess what? That is my bread and butter now. That's all I do. I converted the second bedroom into a studio, and it's you get so much better when you teach. And most of the musicians that come to me that are coming for voice lessons, they're also doing the same thing. If you have the ability to teach, it makes you a better musician, and it is a great, great job. So want to put that out there.
I'll say this. I think that's not so much a side hustle, because it is
that's a main
on what
hustle.
you want to do. Yeah, it is. It really is. And that's
right.
actually that's another good band name, by the way, Main Hustle. I like that.
We're
can
just
work
coming
at
up
this.
with band names all day long.
I love it. No, but seriously, this is some advice I give to folks, which is, if you really want to be in a certain industry and you can't get right into doing what you want, get something adjacent to that, because then you're
Totally.
in the same place and you're talking to the same people, and guess what? Sooner or later, some door is going to open and it's going to happen for you, right?
Yes, that's super smart. I agree. Yeah.
That's pretty clever, because you're also learning about stuff. And I'll give you another Russian proverb, since you teed me up there perfectly, which is this one really struck me. He said, there's a Russian proverb which says, "No one can teach, only the student can learn," which is interesting because it doesn't mean teachers can't teach, but it does mean that people have to take it upon themselves to learn, right, and to experience. And obviously, you've done that several times in your career already, moving to LA, obviously. But I am curious to know, when did it all begin for you? What was it that kind of struck you at some age early in life where you were like, you know what, I got to do this for a living?
Well, I started really young, really young, just based on solely on the fact that I could sing on pitch. When you get a kid that can really sing, that is just kind of like a natural talent.
Perfect.
So they started putting me in, just plays and talent shows. Recorded my first children's album at 6, so I was already in the studio. And I dabbled with it my whole life. And I think when I really knew I wanted to do it for a living was when I discovered I could write a song. So I was taking piano, and then I started playing my own riffs on the piano. And then I wrote my first song. I think I was 14 or 15. And I think once I discovered that, instead of a talent, it became more of an art form at that point, like a creative art form. And I'm like, okay, I really like this now that I know I can write a song. So from there, joined my first band, and the rest is history.
Wow. That's fantastic. Well, listen, we're talking to Paloma Rush. I have to say, very good stuff. I've listened to your single. It's very cute. I love it. It's very popular. It's just fantastic stuff. And God bless you. Good job.
Thank you so much. That was a super fun interview. I really appreciate it. When do we hear it? Saturday?
We'll hear it on, that's right, Saturday, WDJY-FM, folks. Thanks so much for our friends down there in Atlanta. And once again, at Paloma_Rush, PALOMA_Rush. Great job, and we'll talk to you soon. You've been listening to Star Power.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
You got the moves that nobody could do. The touch